Let's Talk Marketing, inclusive marketing to be exact. And to help me discuss this topic, we have a very special guest, Keni Thacker, my mentor and Chief Diversity Creative at 100 Roses from Concrete. Hi, Keni.
Hi. That was almost correct. So I'm Chief Diversity Creative at Keni Thacker LLC. I'm founder and Chief Creative Officer at 100 Roses from Concrete. But you were close.
You have so many titles. It's great. And that's what makes you such a great person to discuss this topic.
Because I run this.
Yes, you run it. But before we jump in, discuss a little bit about your background with us.
Yeah, so I mean, I've been in advertising. Jesus, I've lost count. I think this is my 16th year in advertising. So yeah, I'm pretty old. But as far as doing this DEI work, I was doing it way before it was cool. So I was doing it back in 2011. And to be totally honest with you, after my first taste of doing it, after my very first project doing it, I was like, this is what I gotta do. This is what I'm here for. I don't think I'm on this planet to do anything else. So definitely standing on the shoulders of giants that I admired in the space and growing in the space. It just solidifies my wanting to do this and to fill these empty seats with Black and brown bodies and minds, to just make the industry better, because like we are so very creative, we are so very resourceful, and I think that creative part and that resourcefulness just applies to D&I when you really think about how do we address it in a way that's not so cookie cutter and is not so quote unquote like square or by the book, because we really have to address it in a really creative entrepreneurial type of way, like we would any brand that we're marketing towards any group or any demographic. That's the way we really have to think about DEI. And that's the way I think about it. And that's the way I've been able to do it over the last, I don't know how many years, I guess 11 years or something like that. But as you know, because we've been friends for a while, I also tie in talent development, right? Because that's the big part where, unfortunately, Black and brown people, disenfranchised people of color, like we don't get that development part, right? And we always need to be already trained and already know everything. I remember one time when we were out to one of our famous summer lunches, and I said that, you know, in order to be a person of color in the advertising or marketing business, you almost have to be like a Beyonce or a three-letter athlete. Like you have to be able to dance, you have to be able to sing, and you have to be able to act. Whereas our white counterparts, they just have to know how to do one thing. Right. And that's not fair. So I'm in the business of definitely developing this type of talent, making them beyond just triple threats. I'm just making them threats, period. That's my job, to just make us threats and make us be recognized for everything that we bring to the table, which is valuable and it's special and it's fucking cool at the end of the day. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
I mean, that's what makes you such a great person for this conversation. So are you ready to dive into our questions, Keni?
Let's jump up in this. Let's go.
Well, you threw the term DEI out there, but for those that don't know, it stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's a big term that's been thrown around, especially these past few years. So for businesses that want to incorporate DEI, where would you recommend they start?
I mean, so they have to start at the very beginning, right? Self-reflection is very critical at this stage, especially ones that want to start, because it's also like, how did you not know that this was important? You've been in business for 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, 60 years. Let's go even higher, right? Like, how has this not been a thing? Like, did you not notice that you just have less of a certain type of people in your office? Like, did that occur to anyone? Did it occur to anyone that your leadership board has, if any, people of color in your leadership board? And have you noticed that why on the very junior level and administrative level, that's where you find a lot of the people of color? Like, so not being able to kind of see that gap, but also not really even see that trend. And I'm like, yeah, we just gotta So everybody in the C-suite are all dudes, and they're all white dudes. And anywhere where we do see people of color, it's in like these traditional roles, right? So it's like the account coordinator. It's like, well, they don't call them secretaries anymore. So it's like the administrative assistants, right? Or where you see certain people of color, maybe finance, right? But it's always like being typecast, and that really sucks. I mean, I'm far from an actor, right? But as far as actors that I know, or actors that I know of, they get tired of being typecast as, oh well, they're only good for comedies, or they're only good for serious romantic dramas, right? But so they can't do action, right? So they can never be like in a Marvel movie. So I think it really starts with reflection on how they really think about how these least represented groups are represented, and then move accordingly, and then build upon the strengths that they do have. So let's say there are some strengths in different departments. How do we borrow the strengths of, oh, okay, well, it looks like, finance has a lot of people of color and women. How do we take that secret recipe that they're doing and spread it amongst the other departments, right? I mean, if you're working in the same place, why not share that knowledge? Right? Exactly. Because there must be something they're doing to attract these type of people to that department. But aren't there people just as skilled to do other jobs in other departments that are probably of color, but somehow you're not using that secret sauce that maybe the finance department is doing? So it's very important to kind of build upon those strengths. And then when we think about the weaknesses in the departments where maybe there are no people of color or women or people that are disabled or people from the LGBTQ plus community, why isn't there? Like, let's have that hard conversation.
Yeah. So what you're saying,
and to be totally honest,
no, you're saying there's an imbalance, right? So
yeah.
It's not for lack of talent. It's just there's no talent where people need to make actual decisions.
Because when you think about the part, so I gave you like two different scenarios, right? The departments that are doing it well and the departments that aren't doing it well. You have to look at who's leading those departments. Right? If you got a white male CEO, I can almost bet money that the CFO is going to be a white male too.
Right.
Why is that?
Yeah.
Why was, whenever in that hiring decision, they were like, yeah, we went with him.
Yeah. So
right?
We start with staff. We need to recruit individuals into these high level positions so that we can start having a more inclusive strategy.
Exactly. I think one thing I say to you once in a blue moon, I was like, a fish stinks from the head all the way down.
Right.
So if pardon me for anybody watching this that, like leaves the department or whatever, I'm not calling you incompetent in particular, but the incompetence starts at the top.
Right.
Like, if it's not important at the very top, the same thing will trickle all the way down. But the problem is that when that young, let's say white male sees that, the day he becomes CEO, he's going to apply that same tactic.
Yes.
Because he's going to be like, well, that's what it took for Johnny CEO to be successful. He kind of surrounded himself with other white people.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to do too when I get up there. And I guarantee I will get up there, because as a young straight white male, he has a 90% chance of actually becoming a CEO.
Right.
Before he retires. Like, that's how high the probability is.
Right.
It's so very high.
Yeah. But if
most people of color,
there is, because that's kind of the situation in these corporations, you can't really, just extinguish or get rid of all of the white CEOs. So it's up to them to get into the mindset of making more people of color running the teams and being more inclusive within themselves. So they have to be able to bring that into the organization.
But it's also how you prepare people of color for those roles.
Exactly.
Right? Like, if you're not going to commit to preparing people of color for those roles, DEI don't even matter, to be totally honest with you, right? Because there's a lot of companies, it's like, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. No, it's broke, because you have to understand, you have a people problem, and their people run your business.
Right.
So if people aren't happy, if people feel not seen, if people don't feel represented,
Right.
there's a lot of companies out there. I mean, and especially this younger generation, your generation, a lot of y'all like, I don't want to work for nobody. I'm starting my own shit and
Right.
I'm gonna bring my own people. So
Exactly.
screw them. So like they're not gonna have the monopoly on this field forever
Right.
because more and more young people want to work at places that are definitely, and this is just what the science says, in case
Yeah.
people don't believe in science, and that's
Yeah.
on you. But the science says young people, especially millennials, younger millennials, definitely millennials, Gen Zers, they
Yeah.
want to work at places that are in line with their personal mottos and philosophies. So if it's about giving back to the community, making the world a safer place, making the world, climate change, all the important things that are going on in this world, right? They want to work at places like that.
Yeah.
And if these places aren't doing it, they'll create their own places.
Yeah.
They'll
But
create their own spaces to thrive in.
that's actually a great segue to the next question.
Mm-hmm.
So why is it important that these corporations listen and start to incorporate a DEI strategy? So like, why is a DEI strategy important in marketing, especially the bigger organizations?
Yeah. Well, it's important because the world is changing at a very, very fast pace. Some people like it, some people don't.
Right.
But for the people that don't, you can't control this. This is one thing that you can't control. Yeah, you can control the government and all this other crazy shit, but time, can't control it. America in particular, is becoming browner by the day.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing. Some people may view it as a bad thing. I'm sorry. But this is something you just can't stop. So it's very important to remember that even though America is becoming more browner by the day and it's something you can't control,
right,
it's actually a benefit to brands, right?
Yeah.
Because the one thing that we know is that consumers of color are especially now, are very smart.
Yeah.
But they're also extremely faithful to brands that talk to them and not at them.
Exactly.
So you got to have that strategy. You got to have that strategy. You got to have people that are developing that strategy that represent everybody. So we're not missing the mark, because as you and I know, I mean, you can almost name the brand and they've all missed the mark at one time or another. And advertising has been around for like over 100 years. It's like the mistakes are still happening even today.
Right.
Because you'll see something, you're like, what did they just say?
Yes. You could tell that somebody wasn't part of the strategy that probably would have called them out before that ad went out,
Yeah. I mean, and the thing is, and you and I know, so many eyes I mean, the last time I checked, like it's almost like 250 eyes see a spot before it goes out or work within it, right? From the strategists, from the production people, it's so many people involved, right?
Right.
But when these mistakes are happening, you're like, so no one said anything? Like not one person was like, yeah, we may not want to put that little black boy in the King of the Jungle shirt, right? We may not want to have a white woman strangling a black woman for a PSP ad that it was like maybe early 2000s, like mid 2000s. Like maybe we just shouldn't do that, right. But instead, they kind of listen to some of these, some of these creatives who are mostly white, and they totally believe them. Like, oh, that it's so cutting edge. It's like, okay, I get your cutting edge part, but think about the Black community and how they've been treated, and how would you feel if it was reversed? And there was a Black woman with their hands on the neck of a white woman to sell a portable video game device. Like, it doesn't even make any sense.
Right. It's almost like checks and balances too, because if even if it is an all white team, let's say, and Black people of color, they're not asking these questions. They should be. And there's no like go-to guide, but that comes in with education and all of those different things. So it's definitely a touchy topic, that's for sure.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I mean, as of the last 2 years, there's definitely been agencies that have been working on implementing like ways so that it's like outside of the creative team and everyone working on. They have like I don't want to say like a morality like police because
yeah,
that sounds stupid, but like they have like now a team of people that kind of see stuff when
yeah,
it's done or before it goes out, just to kind of like, is this cool?
yeah,
And whether they green light it or not. Not definitely not all places. This is something that's still a very slow thing that's happening. But there are actually some agencies that are actually like now taking advantage of the
yeah,
very few people of color that they do have. So all these different
right,
ERGs, so whether it's Latinx, whether it's Black, whether it's Asian,
right,
LGBTQ, parents, like running these things past these
exactly.
ERGs or BRGs, and like saying, hey, can you just check this out? Give us your feedback.
Yeah, because
And,
you think now, like, what was it,
mhm,
the recent Pepsi? Well, it's not that recent anymore, but the Pepsi commercial. You
no,
think Pepsi would have known
that
better,
was dumb. No,
you
no,
know?
no. Because if they like, let's just magically say that they did have a person of color in the room,
Yeah,
but was that person a shot caller? Let's just keep it
yeah,
hood real quick. Like, were they a shot caller? Probably not, because they probably did say something like, hey, but they're, relax, you're a junior, or or they were a person of color, but there was no one else. So
no,
there was no one else to kind of corroborate and be like, yeah, like she can't solve civil rights. So,
I mean,
you
probably.
know,
It's weird
because
because if you think about it, even people of color, they might not have
mhm,
that education. You're not have you, there. It also comes to you might not have the right person of color in the room.
yeah,
They're
yeah,
turning
and
to
and I
someone that they think could speak for everyone, and it doesn't apply that way always.
and unfortunately, there's also been, and we've been unconsciously conditioned
Yeah,
to feel like especially if we're the only one in the room, like,
yeah,
I'm the only one, I don't want to be the last one,
yeah.
so let me not say nothing,
Don't say anything.
right? And that's a terrible weight to carry
Yeah,
as a person of color or a woman,
yeah,
right? To think like, well, I don't want to mess this up because I don't want to be the last. So I'm just going to let this ride.
yeah.
But by doing that, that was the shortest lived commercial of all time.
Right.
Like, it was pulled down
Fast,
so fast,
fast.
like so fast.
Yeah.
But the crazy thing is that imagine the millions of dollars that were thrown into that.
Yep.
Like, because I mean, one, she probably, I mean, granted, she's unbelievably wealthy. So, like, it just added to her stack, right? But just like everything else that goes
Right.
into a production and time and the agency that was involved and just every millions of dollars for something that lasted like a minute online.
They were destroyed with that commercial. But
Yeah, yeah.
let's segue to like the future of
Hmm.
AI, right?
Yeah, let's
So
talk about
if
future.
if we're still stuck in this world right now, what does it look like?
Hmm.
Are we moving fast enough? What's your take on where is it going? Where's the future of DEI going?
I personally don't feel like we're moving fast enough. That's why I do what I do.
Right.
That's why I left the agency side, because I felt like we were not moving fast enough. After many, many years on the agency side, I felt like we weren't moving fast enough. And it really depends on the day. Like, what does the future actually look like for it? Because some agencies concentrate on the different letters. Sometimes I feel like agencies don't concentrate on all three,
Yeah.
because since they're so behind the eight ball,
Right.
they try to do what's easiest,
Hmm.
right? So what happens is, there are some, and I'm not even calling out nobody, there are some that will concentrate on the D, right? So they'll concentrate on the diversity and they think, oh, all we got to do is just hire more people of color.
Yeah.
No. Or they concentrate on the E. Oh, well, we just need to kind of probably do a pay equity report and really just
Um,
figure out, like, make sure that everybody's getting paid the right stuff.
right.
Or they do the I. right? So the I is inclusion, right? So like we just need to figure out ways to make people feel more included. So they forget about the pay, they forget about, you know, the general makeup of the organization.
Mhm.
And they expect like for there to be like these kind of overnight
Right.
fixes. It's like, you know, it's almost like, you know, auditioning for American Idol, how some, you know, you're an overnight celebrity, like that. That's the same way a lot of them have treated
Yeah.
DEI, is that they have just thought like, oh, it's an overnight fix
Right.
and we'll be able to be at the top of the heap,
Right.
and everything will be great. But unfortunately, at least in the time that I've been doing this work, I see all of that as like band-aid solutions.
Yeah.
You know, I'm the donor of several tattoos.
Yes.
We need tattoo solutions. We need permanent solutions. We need things that are going to be sustainable. We need things that are going to be realistic instead of like, oh, no, you know, this is going to get us more followers and more tweets and da 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 da. Like, nah, man, like this is people's lives that we're dealing with here. So there needs to be a humane or a humanistic kind of approach to this that will outlive all of us at the end of the day, because I'm far from the only person talking about this or doing this work. This started like 60 years ago. It's like 60 years ago. And I'm not that old, but it's been something that has been important, then it's not. Important, then it's not. Important, then it's not. Lawsuit, important. After the lawsuit, whatever is settled, not no more. It's peaks and valleys. It's peaks and valleys. I mean, even like right now, I feel like we're almost in a semi-valley, right? I feel like white people are tired of hearing about diversity. So like this diversity like fatigue comes about. People that have been blessed enough to create diversity careers find out that, you know, when they get these jobs, their hands are tied behind their back because they're still dealing with a leadership that most likely is all white. So they're not really giving them the room to really grow into this role and actually make systemic change. So like the future, it's you gotta depending on the day, you know, I'll tell you like, oh, it's great. And some days I'll be like, man, I don't know. Like, because it's, I mean, literally yesterday was what? Yesterday was 2 years since George Floyd was tragically murdered, right? And what happened to all these promises? You know, I mean, he was tragically murdered, you know, 2 years ago, but a week ago, a bunch of Black people got killed. The other day, a bunch of brown babies got murdered. So what happened? So what happened to all these millions and millions and millions of dollars of pledging that, oh, we put $50 million into our DEI efforts. We put $30 million into our DEI efforts. Yeah. And where did any of that go? Or has it even been spent?
That's a good question.
These are valid questions to ask, right?
I
mean, $50 million is not a little bit of money, right?
There's some things with $50 million.
You can do some things, but it's also like, where did it go? Like not much has changed. Yes, you've created a bunch of D&I roles and everything like that, but how much actual power do some of these people actually have? You know, I mean, our history, you know, going back to the J-Dub days, we were doing YC, we were developing talent of color in 2017, 2018. Now everybody want to do it.
Yeah.
Oh, welcome to
clarify
the
for
real
the viewers. YC is the Young Commodores that Keni did while he worked at J. Walter Thompson, now Wonderman Thompson. But there's so much truth to what you said about DEI, is that people are tackling each letter and there's a reason it's grouped together. And I think people are forgetting that. Right? Yeah. So, I mean, you already touched upon what organizations are lacking, but is there anything specific you think that stands out most from what's the biggest thing you think they're lacking other than diverse talent? And this is specific to marketing. Like marketing, this is how people view themselves. And when they're looking at the TV, are they being accurately represented? So what are they lacking?
I think they're lacking focus. That's the big part, right? Like, focus on like what's important, not only to the people, but to the business, right? Because I feel like the business always outweighs the people,
Right.
So it just gets blurred after a while, and the people are the one that kind of suffer the consequences.
Right.
So the main thing is focus, and like, because once you have that clear focus on like what you want to do and how you want to get it done and who you want to be involved, like the rest is easy. It's just executing at the end of the day. But you know, if you're not going to commit, if you're not going to focus, if you're not going to engage, then the execution will be poor. Excuse me, piss poor.
So as we wrap up,
Hmm.
what advice
As we
would you,
wrap up.
we're wrapping up, what advice would you give to somebody that wants to enter DEI or, you know, try and be more inclusive? What would you tell them if they want to break into this industry?
Yeah, so this is a question I get all the time, and I'll try to make it short. First is do your homework, man. Like, do your homework. You can't just think, oh, I'm Black, I'm Latinx, I'm woman, I'm gay, I'm a DEI expert.
Yeah.
Nah, no, 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 no. That's not it.
Right.
That's not the job. Needless to say, like, just because you come from a, you know, minority group, disenfranchised group, doesn't make you a DI professional. And I see, like, you know, in LinkedIn profiles. And sorry if someone feels like I'm dissing them, but you know, I always see D&I in people's like titles and everything like that. I was like, man, you ain't been doing this work. You haven't been doing this work. And on top of doing your homework, I think it's very important to obviously, you know, listen to great, you know, chats like this that you're putting together, and also like connect to some of us, right? Connect to, and I'm not putting myself there like, oh, connect to me because I know everything. No, but connect to, there's a bunch of people out there, connect to them and really listen to literally like the blood, sweat, and tears a lot of people have been putting into this work,
Right.
right? To really understand like how it feels to have an idea and get it knocked down by someone who doesn't understand your journey, doesn't understand the psychological trauma that you carry as a person of color, and you're trying to come up with creative ways to really make the office not just more inclusive, but more equitable and more diverse and more cultural, all at the same time, right? I think connecting to people that are actually doing it and people that have been doing it for a while, no disrespect for anyone that's been doing it for like a year or two, but
Right.
like you need to talk to people that have been doing it like 5, 10 years, even more than that, to really understand like how high this mountain is.
Right.
And that also we're climbing this mountain with a weighted backpack.
Right.
So it's not like oh, you just have a bunch of snacks like when we used to go hiking, right? So you know, like it's not that. Like it's literally like 50, 100-pound weights that are in there, because people love to talk about this struggle, right? And I don't think anyone would really have a hard time like connecting to anyone that's doing this work and be like, hey, can I get 15 minutes, 30 minutes, kind of just talk about how do you stay wanting to do this kind of stuff?
Exactly.
Those are really, really valid questions, because I mean, even the best of us, there was times when, you know, I was like, no, I want, nobody cares. There was times like that, but you know, it's very important to really have those stories and have them from people that are not going to give you their POV through rose-colored glasses, but more like, yeah, there's going to be times when you're going to get your ideas shot down, and sometimes your ideas are shot down by even your own people.
Right.
Like, yeah, that happens in the field, because the industry has such a long way in regards to the way it develops, promotes, and
Right.
pays talent and people of color. So it's very important to kind of understand like
Yeah.
what you're getting yourself into,
Right.
but also be ready to
Yeah.
have creative ways to kind of solve these problems, because all diversity problems are not the same at every single agency, but it's because, you know, you have agencies that are about it and you have some agencies that are acting like they're about it but not really about it. Then you have the agencies that don't care at all.
Yeah.
But they just don't care at all, but they'll donate money because they feel like, well, that's what we're doing on our end.
Yeah.
So, you know, like it kind of relieves the guilt of
Yeah.
not having teams. So it's very important to do your homework, talk to people, but also be definitely come up with strategic ways to really solve this, because you know it's going to take all of us. And I mean all of us, I'm talking about all of us white people too. Like it's going to take all of us, because
So
at least you know our white brothers and sisters, they're already on the inside, so it's easier for them to kind of relate to their brothers and sisters, and you're like, yeah, this is like a problem that we actually created.
Right.
So we need to solve it. We can't just always leave it to the Black and brown and Asian people to solve it, because they didn't really create this problem, right? And we're not even pulling the levers of, like, we're not the shot callers at the end of the day. So it's like, how do we do that? It's gonna take everybody at the end of the day. But like, you gotta know where all this derived from, and it's not just people making up facts and all that other stuff. There's actually like almost like a science to this, and a psychology to it as well. And you know, the beautiful thing, at least the thing that I enjoy about doing this work, is really making the employee experience better. And creating those moments that matter. That's a big thing, because you know nowadays it's a candidates market, and people of color, we understand our value, and we're going to ask for that big bag. And if you can't handle it, like, we'll go somewhere else. That's just how that goes.
There's so much truth to education, because even when you're a minority, you're not speaking for just your group, you're speaking for all the groups. So you have to go in open to also speak for the Asian, or, you know, people as a Hispanic person, or however. So there's so much truth to that. Well, thank you, Keni. Any final thoughts as we end this nice little chat? DEI marketing. Woo!
Yeah. I don't know if I have any final thoughts. I think I talked a whole lot.
You definitely talked a whole lot, but I think it was all very important. And hopefully we can continue this conversation. Hopefully people are inspired by this chat.
My only final thoughts is that agencies also need to understand that they don't have all the answers. And that's where organizations and my private company, like, you know, Keni Thacker LLC, 100 Rows from Concrete, we have the answers. We have the answers. It may not be the answers they like. Because, you know,
it's not always going to be.
This is not all rosé and donuts, you know. This is hard liquor and some hard conversations, needless to say, you know. And like, as I said in one of the answers in the beginning, this self-reflection, like looking in the mirror and being like, wow, we've known we've had this problem for so long, but we've done nothing. And the sad part is that it took, unfortunately, you know, the death of a Black man on TV to kind of re-energize this conversation. And that shouldn't be the case. Like, we shouldn't wait for bad things to happen to re-energize this conversation. This needs to be just a part of the business. Period.
Well, thank you, Keni. That's all we got. It's a wrap.
Let's wrap this shit up.